Hello YouTube, and welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how in both the extreme left and the extreme right, if either they get their little revolution or their putsch respectively, there will be purging on both sides. And it will not just be of their enemies. It will be of their current allies in the present day that we are talking here. So, for example, we can see an Antifa apologist, such as the YouTuber Vaush, for example. He's somebody who has defended them. He sees violence against what he perceives to be fascism as justified. Well, here's the thing. If Antifa ever took over, and I stated this in my video entitled In Condemnation of Antifa, which you can watch from a couple months back. If they ever did take power, which I don't think would happen, but if it did, how long do you think it would be before Vaush himself would be eliminated? Probably not that long, right? Probably not that long. Why? Because he's for things like gay rights and stuff. But we know that socialist systems, communist systems, as soon as the most brutal comrade, and it's always the most brutal comrade, that is a law of politics. If I had a law of politics, it would be, Castley's law. The most brutal comrade always prevails in the revolution, no matter how utopian the aims of those intellectuals behind it, right? We can see this with Stalin, Hoxha, Tito, Mao, Kim. Oh man, it goes on and on and on. They've got like 60 plus communist regimes. They all aim to build a workers' paradise. They all executed the intellectuals and consolidated power around the dear leader, and then became very staunchly conservative and very economically left-wing until they stagnated and eventually collapsed, right? That's how communism works. That is the trajectory of communism. North Korea is still in that process. Communist China is still in that process, but it'll happen eventually. It'll happen eventually, and we will take them out. We will bring about their downfall before then, because there's no point in waiting. It could take a long time, right? It's a great deal of human suffering that we would bear witness to, right? Unacceptable. So here's the thing, right? So Vaush, he gets purged at some point. My guess is it's actually pretty early on. I mean, when the USSR, when that whole revolution happened, it took about 20 years or so. Some of these revolutions, it takes less time. It takes less time until the Great Terror happens. I mean, the Red Terror really, it kicked off in like 1927, 1928 when Stalin first really took hold of power. Now, I'm talking about within the party. Lenin killed a lot of people. Lenin killed millions of people that he disagreed with, like white Russians, serfs that refused collectivization, etc. But it wasn't really until Stalin that a lot of the internal party purges really kicked off. That wasn't until like 1927 beginning, but it really got underway in the late 30s with the Red Terror. Most of the deaths, of course, were the natural enemies of the party, peasants, farmers, really anybody who wasn't a working class industrial worker, which in Russia, that was most people, right? But it took a long time. It took like over a decade, right? And minimum before the internal party purges really got started. My guess is with something like Antifa and whatnot, it would happen a lot sooner. With the Nazis, for example, the Nazis, they had their Night of Long Knives pretty early on in terms of ridding the party of any sort of leftist elements and everything, any sort of Strasserite type elements and consolidated power around Hitler. And so you can look at Lang, a lot of these other fasci, brown shirt type people, etc. They all got purged. They all got purged, even though they were the main people that brought about Hitler's rise to power. And he had them executed, of course, in the Night of Long Knives. And why was that? It was because they were a personal threat to his power. But that's one interpretation. which I think is valid, but it's also the case that there was an ideological disagreement, that Hitler was more right-wing. He had a more fascist agenda as it relates to economics, for example. Even though they both agreed on social aspects, on Jews bad, all that sort of stuff. They were all fascies. Hitler was a more right-wing fasci. He had a different vision for Germany, and he was worried about the SA ultimately having too much power and everything. He wanted personal prestige, right? Stalin, of course, had the same sort of motives on the communist side, but of course it took a lot longer. It was also due to the fact that he was the second leader. Lenin had a lot of other enemies to purge first, and then they got to the party enemies, more so with Stalin, right? But we can see here that in both cases, the purge happens either way. It inevitably happens, and this is true on the far right and the far left. It's not a matter of, only fascists purge themselves or only communists purge themselves. No, they both do it. They both do it. And so the point that I'm going to make in this video is that two prominent YouTubers, we're going to look at Vaush and we're going to look at Nick Fuentes, the Nicker Fuentes, as I call him, right? These guys, they're both huge champions of their fringe and cringe worldviews. They're both, if they had their way, they'd both get led to the firing squad very shortly. I mean, they'd be rotting 6 feet under very shortly if they actually got their way. And now why is that? Well, in the case of Vaush, we can already see right off the bat. I mean, just look at him. I mean, look, okay, he's not the worst guy out there. He's not like a tanky level. He likes to distinguish himself from the tankies and stuff. I mean, he's a communist and everything, but he's a really cringy guy. But he's not like a Stalinist or anything. He's not like that level. He doesn't want to do a mass genocide or anything. He believes in the utopianism. In other words, he's like he's like a Bukharin or a Zinoviev type figure, a Kamenev type figure. He's like an intellectual-ish revolutionary. So he'll be one of the old Bolsheviks that gets taken to the back and executed, and his blood will grace the floors of the steel prison outside. I don't know. I don't even know what state he lives in, but let's just say Washington D.C., whatever their max security prison that the Antifa state would set up, and he'll be led out to one of their mass graves, and that's basically what will become his fate if Antifa ever prevails. And he sides with them. He'll side with it. He will, in that sense, sign up for his own demise. He will bring about his own demise willingly, actively, without knowing it. Because, of course, nobody learns from history. Oh, okay, I'm not going to go on a big rant here, but it really does anger me. It really does anger me how we've had a century now of a track record on the left and the right to point to say, you might agree with the utopian ideas, but look at what happens every single time these are put into practice. It's like that meme that I've got, right? Hey comrades, if we try it for the 63rd time, I swear it'll work this time. I promise, with alternating uppercase and lowercase letters. And then all the comrades go along with it. And then, of course, the most brutal comrade, he's the one who consolidates power. And it's always a he, because these communist socialist systems, they're inherently chauvinist and patriarchal. I've talked about this before. They view women as nothing but cattle to produce soldiers for the dear leader. They are natalist as it gets. They believe in my birthrights. Let's just make as many soldiers as possible. They don't believe in innovation. They don't believe in tech. They don't believe in focusing on those alive right now. They view it as, let's try to have as many kids as possible, make the Red Army as big as possible. Because, of course, they are based on conscription. They're not based on having the most advanced technology, like Raytheon or anything. No. They're like, how can we get 1 million guys with AK-47s so that we can counter our enemies that do invest in technology, right? Because communism can't compete. Communism is a bunk and junk ideology. Socialism is a bunk and junk ideology. It's funny, a lot of socialists these days, they use the okay boomer meme. It's like, yeah, but socialism is a boomer ideology. I mean, most of the people who really get around socialism are like the 50-year-old type Stalinist tanky figures who like Jeremy Corbyn and hate Jews and everything. and they, they're Nazbol-y. They want to basically undo everything that neoliberalism has done and all this stuff. They're really cringy dudes, right? Yeah, so yeah, socialism is a bunch of junk ideology. But the point here, of course, is that with Vaush, what happens to him? Well, he brings about the revolution. He does he does memetics and propaganda warfare for the revolution. He conducts apologetics ad nauseum on behalf of Antifa. Let's just say in this hypothetical America, they do win. Now, I don't think they ever will win. Like, even if they try, I don't think it's going anywhere. But let's just say for the sake of argument, they do win, and they get to set up their socialist, workers, communist paradise. Guess what happens? Well, now all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we win. Now there's not going to be any democracy, so we need to choose a leader, and that leader needs to, have the confidence of the party. So they have their little vote. The strong comrade wins, makes deals, betrays his other comrades. He comes to the top, and now all of a sudden we've got like some dude. Who knows who it is, right? It's probably some guy nobody's ever even heard of. It's probably some really sketchy lefty type Comrade Creeper dude. I've talked about Comrade Creeper before on this show. I've talked about Comrade Creeper. I went to school with Comrade Creeper. Really creepy guy. Really commie guy. Stalinist. Really, 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 really creepy guy. Creepy guy. So that's why I call him Comrade Creeper, right? Communist, creepy dude, like that kind of guy. Anonymous, obscure, the kind of guy that if you had to put money on it, you'd say he's either going to shoot up a school or he would be the Stalin type figure if the revolution ever got going. Well, in my hypothetical, the revolution does get going. So just bear in mind, remember that. For all their utopian rhetorics, for all their imperialism bad rhetorics, for all their rhetoric that might sound progressive, just remember, the leader that takes over is the guy that right now we all think is about to shoot up a school. That's the dude that everybody's going to have to be going to the rallies to support and obey the directives of and denounce their neighbors on behalf of and accuse of not following his word accurately enough. And all will regard him as the eternal leader who's divinely inspired by Lenin and Marx and such. Oh man, communism, it's so cringe. It's so cringe. Oh man, leftism is bunk, but and people actually believe this still. Like I was talking about how it angers me so much how people haven't learned anything from history. It's like, I don't care how progressive your version of it would be, how you're like, no, well, that wouldn't happen if I was the dear leader. It's like, no, the fact that there is a dear leader necessarily means that it'll happen, because even if you personally become the dear leader, if you want to stay the dear leader, you're going to have to break some skulls and send some people to the gulags. Otherwise, you're not going to be the dear leader for very long. One of your comrades is, oh man, Vaush says comrades too. Actually uses the term comrade. Anytime anybody like that right there sends off, that's like a red alert. I've had that happen to me before where somebody will just call me comrade out of nowhere. Like, okay, comrade. Like, unironically, mind you. Like, some lefty type sort of person will just like call me comrade anywhere, out of, just some sense of solidarity or whatever. And immediately I'm like, what? Like, what? I mean, it's like one of those sirens. It's like, whoop, whoop, whoop. It's like, oh, cringe alert. We got a commie in the room. I mean, oh man. Oh, how cringe. But yeah, as I was saying, my friends, oh, the revolution, it always goes the same way. I mean, the closest example to some sort of like social democratic utopia or whatever you can think of that people will point to is like Denmark or or Sweden, even though those are like capitalist countries, right? And of course, these tanky type commie losers, they think it's like super far right wing and liberal and everything, so they hate those. But like, that's as close as you're ever going to get to their version of a utopia, because that happens through a democracy over time, and so people just happen to vote for a more left wing sort of understanding of capitalism. Like, that's as close as you're going to get to that real utopia. Because if you do the revolutionary route, if you say, nah, incrementalism is for boomers and chuds, I'm going to go with my revolution. It's like, okay, well, now you're giving all of your power and your souls over to the dear leader, Comrade Creeper, who 5 months ago was plotting shooting up his high school, but now he's taken over the party, and now everybody has to obey his will. It's like, those are your options, bud. It's like, if you want to forfeit incrementalism, you also forfeit law and order. And once you do that, nobody's going to be there to protect you. Nobody was there to protect Zinoviev and Kamenev. And why was that? It's because they killed off everybody that would have protected them. They killed off the whites. The whites either had to flee in exile, or they were all butchered for opposing Stalin. So, and they were the ones who oversaw it, and they helped and gave the party directives to slaughter them. And then when Stalin ordered them to be executed as members of the treasonous factions, as working with the Germans, even though it was trumped up charges, what did they say? They said, but Comrade Stalin, he promised that he wouldn't kill us. He promised that he wouldn't do it. He promised. And of course the comrade's just like, well, Comrade Stalin's revoked his promise. It's like, of course he's revoked his promise. What, you think the dear leader's bound by some constitution, or he's bound by some judicial oversight committee? He had the oversight committee buried in a mass grave. Nobody's there to save your ass at this point, bud. Welcome to socialism. Oh, man. No, see, this is what I'm talking about. Leftism is cringe. Leftism is cringe. I mean, this is what happens, right? I mean, the most close thing that you can get to a leftist version of utopia without it doing that is if you go through a democratic capitalist process and build a social democracy like Sweden or Denmark. But for all these people, they see that and they say, oh, but that's boomer. That's not enough. That's too capitalist. That's too liberal. Well, okay, you want to sell your soul to the devil, go ahead, but then don't be surprised when the devil isn't bound by judicial oversight or my constitution. It's like, nah, that's not how it works, bud. If you forfeit the due process and the democratic system because you want it all, then all of a sudden, guess what? You wind up with nothing but a bullet to the head. That's what happens. Every single time, this is what happens, mind you. I mean, it's so obvious to me. It's so obvious. So Vaush, he's a freaking idiot that he can't see this, and he fancies himself an intellectual, just like Zinoviev and Kamenev and all those old Bolsheviks. They fancy themselves, and Bukhar, and they all fancy themselves intellectuals. And then they were shocked. It turned out that Stalin was actually, he didn't really want to have them around. And they're like, but we're the revolutionary vanguard. What's up with that? It's like, well, I know what's up with that. Your whole purpose was so that he could consolidate power. He's already consolidated power. You're no longer of any use. In fact, you're more a threat at this point. So you got to go to the mass graves too. And now you could say, well, I feel sorry for those guys or whatever. They were misguided. No, don't feel sorry for them. They oversaw the slaughter of literally tens of millions of Russians, right? So no, they deserved it. They deserved it 100%. Now, I wish it wasn't Stalin that had them executed. I wish that we liberated them and then had a tribunal and executed the Bolsheviks. That's how I would have done it in a standard court, like the Nuremberg trials. That's what should have happened. But it is what it is. Justice has a way of working itself through, even in the most ridiculous systems. Things will come back to bite you. Now, here's the thing, of course. I've talked a bit about how this is the fate that awaits Vaush if he ever gets his way, that he will be going to a mass grave just like the liberals that Antifa hate. I mean, it's like, okay, first it's the liberals, then it's the Jews, then it's the party traitors. Like, they'll label him a party traitor. And of course, to get back to the question of why, well, as I mentioned, he's for gay rights, but he also identifies as queer. Guess what? Socialists, they don't tend to like queers very much. They tend to call them liberal bourgeois F words. And I'm not saying the F word with the U. I'm talking the F word with the two G's, right? That's what they label them, you know. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Gotta keep it a bit PC on YouTube, right? Gotta keep it PC. But yeah, that's how it goes. Like, it's not even a matter of debate. It's not like, oh, well, debate me, bro. It's like, no, just read a history book. There's no debate to be had here. This is a law of how socialism and communism go. If you do away with democracy, you also do away with any bars to the personal extension of the dear leader in all aspects of society. I mean, come on, dudes. But onto the right wing knucklehead, the Nicker Fuentes. So he wants his little white ethno state. He wants his little fasci putsch. He wants to set up, the Fourth Reich in America, basically, is what he wants. Ah, what a clown. What a clown. He's a petulant child. I talked about him. He's a cringy dude. Fringy dude. But here's the thing, and y'all know where this is going. Y'all know, if you're a hawk like me, you know where this is going. Here's the thing. His name, it's not Nick Smith. It's not Nick Otto von Hitler or some crap. No, his name is Nick Fuentes. Really? He's going to survive the purges? Mr. Fuentes is going to survive the white ethno state? Oh, come on. Y'all know he gets taken to a mass grave probably sooner than Vaush if Antifa takes over. They're going to call him not white enough, not Aryan enough, and they're going to send him to the firing squad or the gas chambers or whatever little fun they have in store for everybody that they see as an enemy of the state. Oh, this is so obvious. Oh, man, it's so obvious. I mean, you could say to Lang, you could say to Bukharin and Zinoviev and Kamenev and all the old school revolutionaries and putschists and stuff, the fascists that, well, in fairness to them, they didn't see it coming. They thought, we all work to get Hitler or Stalin in charge and then everything's going to be hunky-dory and they didn't know any better. One, that's dumb. That's dumb on their part. That was irresponsible on their part. But okay, that's fair. It was the first time. Really, we're like 80 years on now. We can all look back on this and we can learn the lessons of history, my friends. It's going to happen to Nick Fuentes. If he gets his little Groyper army to take over and form a little ethno-state, guess what? One of those days, the Groypers show up for him and call him a K-word F-word, right? and then they have him executed as a race traitor. Well, they wouldn't even say he's a race traitor. They would say that he was non-white. Like, I think he's like, what, part Italian or something? Like, really? They're going to consider the Italians to be legitimate in America? I mean, even during World War II, when it was a matter of life and death, the survival of the Axis, Hitler basically offered hardly any support to the Italians. Why? Because he saw them as like subhumans. He didn't see the Italians as like true Aryans or whatever. He definitely didn't see the Japanese as true Aryans, obviously. So even amongst their little alliance, their little Axis, they didn't really offer that much support. They didn't really work together that much. Oh man, you think Nick Fuentes is going to survive the ethno state? Oh man, he's going to get purged. So, it's going to be so. I mean, now granted, of course, I'm probably also going to get purged. Well, no, I get out of the country. I wouldn't stay. I get out of here if the things went to that level. Of course, he would stay, of course, because he would think, well, I'm going to get to be one of the leaders. I'm going to get to be like work for state TV and get a cushy job and everything and call people degenerates and stuff. And then it's like, wait, they're calling me degenerate. No, I'm innocent. It's all fake charges. It's all fake news. It's like, okay, tell that to the kangaroo court, bud. I mean, come on, man. And it's like, and of course, no sympathy for him because he wants that to happen to everybody who's like non-white, to everybody that he sees as degenerate. He wants all the gays to be executed. He says that he wants to kill all the gays and send them to hell. That's his worldview. And it's like, oh, well, guess what? Eventually they're going to come for you too, bud. It's like, you might not be gay. Sure, I'll take you at your word and say you're straight. I don't care. I don't care. You could be gay. You could be straight. I don't care at all. I'm not a paleo moron. I'm not a libertarian. I don't care about that sort of thing. But you got the name Fuentes, dude. You might as well have your name, like your last name be like Crystal, or have your last name be like, you know, like what's another, like just standard, you know, standard Jewish name or something, you know. It evades me currently, but you know, Cohen, that sort of thing. It's like, your name's Fuentes. You ain't surviving that. I mean, you're gonna wind up in a mass grave with a bunch of people that right now you would use racial slurs for, and you'll be in there rotting just the same as them. Why? Because in the eyes of the fascies, in the eyes of the Groypers that you're egging on right now to bring this about, you are just as much non-Aryan as blacks, Mexicans, everybody else. I mean, the same grave awaits you. The same mass grave awaits you as it awaits them. And you'll call it for them, and then you'll cry and whine when they bring it about for you. But it will be too late then, my friend. And this goes out to Vaush too, if you guys ever see this video. By the time they come for you, it will have been too late, because you will have already supported them as they dismantled all the institutions of government that would have been there to protect you, that you labeled liberal, bourgeois, capitalist, Jewry, or whatever. Now, I know Vaush, he doesn't have that racial angle, right? But of course, Antifa will go to the anti-Semitic level. They always do. Just look at Jeremy Corbyn. That's the next step. I mean, a lot of the people in Antifa are already anti-Semitic. They already see Jews as like banksters or whatever, right? The globalists. Oh, it's disgusting. I hate these people. My friends, I hate these people. I hate these people 100%, because what they are guilty of two things right now. They're guilty of having such a radical idea of change that they want, and thinking that it could all go perfectly, and two, thinking that they're exempt from the laws of history and the trajectory of how these things go. If you take away due process, and you take away the rule of law, and you take away democracy, and you take away the courts, because they're all liberal bourgeois and they all work against the class interests or the race interests, pick your poison, right? Whether you're left or right. Well, guess what? Sure, they won't be there to protect your political enemies. But when you become a political enemy of Comrade Creeper, who takes over the White House, well, guess what? They won't be there to protect you either. And yeah, I don't take pleasure in these genocidal regimes. I don't think it's a good thing that Stalin killed all those people. I don't think it's a good thing that any of that happened. But I don't lose any sleep over the fact that Zinoviev and Kamenev got shot in a prison outside Moscow, because Stalin decided that they were enemies of the party and had them purged. I don't lose sleep over it, because they were the ones who paved the road to hell to begin with. So they wrought that upon themselves. You know, you reap what you sow. And what Vaush and what the Nicker Fuentes are sowing right now is their own doom. It is their own demise. It is their own mass grave. And I just want to bring this to everybody's attention so that we can very easily nip it in the bud, and we can reduce the chances of that happening from 0.1% or whatever it is down to 0%. Because let's not play games with the future of our civilization. Am I right? So thank you for watching, my friends. Have a good night.